Imagine waking up to the birds singing. Your window was open all night because the air is clean and the temperature outside is climate appropriate, and you're calm. You don't worry about it going away because it is your constitutional right to clean air, water, and a safe environment. That's what we're talking about with our guest today on EnvironMental with Dandelion. EnvironMental is a podcast where we lean into the sustainability stories you might have missed. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm Ab, your host and the chief cultivator behind Dandelion Branding. Our mission is to make noise for purpose-driven brands and to push sustainability into mainstream conversations. Today, I am bringing back Maya Van Rossum. She's a friend of the podcast and the founder of Green Amendments for the Generations, which is a US-based nonprofit organization dedicated to helping individual states pass green amendments in their constitutions. Before we jump into this incredible conversation, I just want to remind you that a lot of the algorithms out there devalue conversations around sustainability, and we refuse to censor that or fall prey to the green hush. And we need your help to make sure that these stories are heard. So please spread the love by liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast with all your friends who lean a little eco. Maya, it has been 3 years since you've been on the show. And obviously some shady shyster stuff has been going down in the legal zone. So we definitely wanted to have you back on the show to hear an update. How have you been? What have you been doing?
Right. Well, I'm really, really thrilled to be back. Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. And so it's great to not just be listening to it, but now speaking to it. So thank you for that. For those people, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, right?
Yeah.
A green amendment is an amendment that gets added to the Bill of Rights section of our state constitutions and recognizes in an enforceable way the inalienable human right of all people to clean water and clean air, a safe climate, and healthy environments, and puts these rights with that same highest legal and constitutional standing that we give to other cherished freedoms, like the right to free speech and freedom of religion,
Yeah.
private property rights. We all know how powerfully they're protected because of their constitutional recognition and protection. Well, now that same power comes to bear for the environment. And when I founded the movement, there were only green amendments in 2 states, Pennsylvania and Montana, and that was all the way back in December 2013. And each of those states have their own story, and I have my place in the Pennsylvania story, which we will not dive into. In 2021, going into effect in 2022, we secured a green amendment in the state of New York. So when I was last on the show, the New York Green Amendment was fresh.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we had green amendment proposals that have been put forth in about 10 states or thereabouts at the time.
I think so. Yep.
So at this point, we now have the green amendments in the 3 states, Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York. No new ones have been passed, but the number of green amendment proposals that have been put forth has doubled. We have more than 20 states from coast to coast where green amendments have been put forth, and people are eagerly educating and advocating to try to secure them. And we've had varying levels of progress, but things are well on their way because people recognize the power of this pathway. And in the 3 states with a green amendment, we've continued to see how these amendments really make a difference. They're being used by people in advocacy as well as in the courts to advance energy, to secure critical protections for their air and their water from dangerous industrial operations and government decisions that would otherwise subject people to devastating levels of environmental harm. But because people had the right to fight for their health and safety when it comes to the environment, by virtue of the Green Amendment, they've been able to make a difference.
Wow. Do you think that the current political climate in the US is having an impact one way or the other? Or do you think that this is the people who are going to do it are going to do it?
No, I think it really has had an impact. I mean, before the current federal rollbacks of environmental protections, and frankly, a growing slew of rollbacks in a number of states, we needed a green amendment because the way environmental laws are written in Pennsylvania, not in Pennsylvania, in the United States, in every state across the nation, is they're written literally to legalize environmental pollution, degradation, and harm. And so they give
Right.
a level of protection that works in some places, spaces, and circumstances, but not across the board for everyone. And when pollution is allowed to accumulate under these laws, that accumulation can bring our air and water pollution and other environmental harms to, devastating levels. But because the law says it's legal, people are, left exposed and harmed and injured. With a green amendment in those places and spaces, when that approach to environmental protection fundamentally fails to protect us, people can
Mm-hmm.
turn to their right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment to get a needed remedy. So we've always need the amendments, but it takes time for people to understand they're needed, right? They hear, oh my gosh, we have the Clean Water Act in my state. We have the Clean Streams Law and the Clean Air this and the, wetlands protection that. And so they think they're protected until they have
They get
something
overturned.
happen next door, right? And they experience the harm. And then suddenly the doors, open up to learning, and we can talk
Yeah.
about how the laws work and why the Constitution is important. With the current slew of federal rollbacks happening so quickly at the federal level, people's eyes are being opened up much wider, much more quickly. They're looking for solutions, and they're naturally coming to green amendments for the generations and finding that there is this constitutional pathway that can provide real help.
Interesting. I was wondering if it was going to be something along those lines. We've seen that happen where it's like the tipping point and people are like, "Holy crow, we have to do something." Especially like the Clean Water Act just like bye. Yeah.
I mean, but the Clean Water Act, like all laws, right? And that's a federal law, so applies nationwide. But what the Clean Water Act says is come to your federal agency or your state agency, get a permit, go forth
Hmm.
and pollute. That's how it works. Go forth, impact,
Interesting.
wipe out the wetlands. The thing is, as long as you get the right reviews and the right permits from the right agencies, whether you're talking about federal law or state law, it's very legal
Yeah.
to pollute the environment and inflict devastating harm. It might be
Wow.
managed, it might be limited, but it becomes legal. And because it's legal, now industry is the one that gets the entitlement to inflict harm. And because the law says it's legal, when that harm,
Oh my gosh.
contaminates drinking water so seriously that it gives kids cancer, the people are stuck. But if you have this constitutional right to clean water that is above state and federal law, that guides state and federal law, that's supposed to check government power run amok, then you can do something about it. Now, I want to make clear, a green amendment at the state level, a constitutional right at the state level, is not going to check the Congress or the president or the US EPA. It's going to check state government action and inspire greater protections at the state level. But that's really meaningful because here in the
Hmm.
United States, the way our system of environmental laws work is there's a division of labor, and the state has an incredible level of power. And while traditionally the government sets sort of the minimum level of protection states have to give, states are entitled to give greater protection. When you have a
Mm.
green amendment in place where the people through constitutional amendment have given themselves a right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment, now state government becomes obligated to give a higher level of protection, and the people can enforce it when government fails. So it's very, very important, particularly as we see that federal bottom level of protection, that floor of protection just drop away as we're
Yeah.
seeing now.
Incredible. I feel like you're in the right place at the right time and it's almost unfortunate, but very fortunate that you're there doing it and fighting for it and that you have a like structure in place already so that people can find green amendments for the generations and already have something to hold on to instead of just like, whirling around in this windy tornado that we see coming at us all the time. So and you have answers. People can ask you questions. You know how to answer these questions. And I feel like 3 years ago, you saw this coming. I feel like we talked about there's a tipping point coming, shit's gonna hit the fan, like we're gonna be ready for it. And I like are you clairvoyant? Like, are you, how did you?
I've been an environmental activist, attorney, and leader for over 30 years, right? And so I've experienced the many ways the law fails us. And the truth is, we needed this pathway 10 years,
Yep.
20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. We needed this pathway 100 years ago. If we had had constitutional green amendments in every state constitution across our nation and secured one at the federal level, which is also part of my goal, then frankly, we wouldn't be in the place we're at now with so many communities being forced to drink contaminated water, breathing polluted air that doesn't just smell bad, but it gives them heart attacks and asthma
Yeah.
attacks. It causes Alzheimer's and ADHD. It impacts the capacity of children to learn, right? Water pollution that is literally giving kids cancer. And we're taking away from people the beautiful nature that enriches their lives. And so much of that could have been averted and avoided
Mm-hmm.
if I had been more clairvoyant and born 100 years ago. But
Yeah.
we're at where we're at. And, I'm just really pleased that people see the power of this pathway and understand the importance of working in partnership, because it's a very
Yep.
easy concept, but it can be quite difficult to implement, especially when you're taking on the industry opposition. And that's what I help. I help
Mm.
people with all facets of that. They're the leaders in their state, but I work with them as expert and partner to help them make it happen.
Yeah, that's incredible. Our favorite question to ask here is always to share the role in the sustainable transition that your company is playing. Since you're on, I'm kind of curious if you've redefined it or if anything has changed in the past 3 years in the role that you see green amendments for the generations playing.
I think what I've just experienced is the value of playing this partnership role. When I first founded the movement just over a decade ago, I had accomplished this amazing victory in my role as the Delaware Riverkeeper using Pennsylvania's long ignored language that was in the Constitution but wasn't utilized effectively, using that to challenge a very devastating pro-fossil fuel law. And after that victory, it was like a mind shift for me. Wow, we need this everywhere. Let me look at every state. And only Montana had something similar. And if people have heard of the Held v. Montana youth climate litigation pursued by our Children's Trust so beautifully,
Yep.
the reason why that was such an incredible victory is its foundation was the Montana Green Amendment.
Oh,
But when I first, was doing this research and found that it was only Montana and Pennsylvania, I said, wow, let me just tell everybody about this powerful pathway for protection and say, here's this great thing, go forth and do it on your own. And what I've came to learn was that wasn't really a fair request of people, right? People needed help. They needed knowledge. They needed the ability to take on the industry. It's pretty intense to understand how constitutional law and environmental law work. And it's pretty intense to take on the lies that industry peddles, as well as
oh yeah.
their friends in politics. And so I then evolved and to say, don't try to do it on your own, because if you mess it up, you mess it up for everyone, right? So partner up. And that's when the second edition of my book that came out around the time that we spoke, that was the shift in the book, saying it's not just a great idea. Let's partner up, green amendments for the generations in you, and
Mm-hmm.
let's do it together. And what I've experienced since we last spoke is the important value of that shift in the strategy.
Good. It feels more community oriented, more connected, and grassroots like togetherness, which I feel like is kind of a balm over a lot of the like divide and conquer strategies that we see and that like we talk about in our news podcasts. So every month we do one that is an update on what's going on generally in the news in the sustainability, and once we have a sustainable business owner or a founder that with their inspiring story. And we often talk about this divide and conquer we're seeing in ways to get your rights taken away. And I feel like the way that you're approaching it in such a community oriented space is very, very lovely to see. It's incredible.
It is one of the things that I really do appreciate. Again, having done environmental activism for so long, you have the organizations doing the water and
Hmm.
the air and the wildlife. And it's not just the wildlife.
Yep.
These people are doing the birds, and those people are doing the mammals, and
Yeah.
those people are doing the fish, right? And so everybody is fighting to do their beautiful work. But as you said, sort of in silos, right?
It's very
And there
siloed.
are
Yeah.
yeah. And the beautiful thing about the Green Amendment movement is it allows all of these facets of environmental protection, but also, local farmers who are trying to
Hmm.
advance regenerative farming and need that clean water, other local businesses that based on ecotourism, or, the coffee shop, right, that wants visitors
Yeah.
and is surrounded by beautiful trees, right? It allows all these people and organizations and businesses focused on a healthy environment to come together in common cause. And as you said, work as a community. And when
Hmm.
victory is achieved, very literally, we are achieving something monumental for everybody. It's not that
Hmm.
we're stopping that one bad industrial operation that is primarily going to
Yeah.
hit that one community, or that we're passing that one good law that's going to make a little more progress on addressing climate change. No, we are across the board, literally lifting all boats and empowering everyone to be better protected and to
Yep.
be better protectors of their family, their communities, and beautiful Mother Earth.
Beautifully said. Really beautifully said. I have a really specific question for you, and I guess like something that I've been watching in the news is are these super funds, and they're really on the East Coast that I'm seeing. I think one of them is in New York, and maybe one of them is in Pennsylvania that I saw. But it is essentially this a law that got passed where the state wants to charge like fossil fuel companies to pay for being more resilient for climate change impacts because New York has hurricanes now, for instance. And so they have this super fund where they want the fossil fuel companies to like pay into a fund so that they can build resilience into their infrastructures. And the federal government sued about it, and I think it's still pending. But I guess my question for you is, do you think that the government will have a harder time overturning a law that offers protection like that in a state like Pennsylvania that has a green amendment, because they can use the green amendment to kind of share this is what we're doing, we're protecting people and planet,
Yeah, I mean,
versus one that doesn't.
I think having the Green Amendment could very well be an important part of the defensive strategy. I think that there are going to be a lot of legal arguments that state government will be able to use to protect from federal government overreach.
Okay.
And to be perfectly honest with you, a lot of it's going to be depend on how the federal government is framing this, whether or not
Okay.
they are able to accurately make the case that there's some level of preemption in this particular space. And if there is, then we're in federal land. But if we're in
Mm.
state land, then the Green Amendment becomes a powerful tool, as you said, to help defend this pathway for protection. And I think when you talk about, I was wondering where you were going with the question, because
Yeah.
another way to think about the question, sometimes people say, well, is this a good idea? Should we be doing? It's a great idea, right? We already have impacts in place, and we need to resolve them. Whatever the issue, putting in place a green amendment isn't going to instantly make all the bad stuff go away and stop
No.
happening, right? It's going to take time to utilize the amendments. Of course, life is going to continue, modern life, and there are going to be impacts. It's just how do those impacts play out? So, getting resources to address past harm, whatever the issue, is powerful and important. But what becomes disappointing is when you have a state that's pursuing that kind of remedy. For example, saying, let's get more money from the fossil fuel industry to make our state more resilient in responding to the impacts of climate change. Oh, but at the same time, we're going to continue to pass laws and approve oil and gas industrial operations,
Yeah.
apace. And we're not going to modify things, and we're not going to slow things down, and we're not going to pump up the pressure to transition to renewables. And unfortunately, we see that a lot, whether it's this kind of issue or another kind of issue. We see government on the one hand trying to pass a law to get additional resources, to do good things, to get restoration of harms from the past. But at the very same time, they continue to perpetuate the very industries, laws, and decisions that brought us that harm in the first place.
Yeah.
And so the Green Amendment can be used to support that good thing, to enhance
Yeah.
resilience and get
To
those
stop.
government
Yeah.
officials, that's right, to be more
Yeah.
responsible in stopping the harm, and don't be hypocritical, right? Like, hypocrisy is a horrible thing, especially in the environmental arena, and yet we
Yeah.
see it across the board. But the Green
Totally.
Amendment can help level that, playing field and give people, real people, power in, the decisions that happen and that impact them.
100%. And not just power either, like empowerment, like hope. It's so hard to sit there sometimes, and you can go down this spiral. I don't know if you still spiral, but I do, certainly, where I'm like, I just don't do enough. I can't do enough. I can't save the world. There's nothing I can do. I'm just, whoa. And like, then you can have something stable to hold on to. No, I'm making sure that this is a right. Or for me, I'm making sure every single story I come across is out there and told, that truth is being told, that, we're making change in the world. When you have that thing to hold on to, you have a jumping off point all the time. And sometimes it's all you need to keep that hope stick alive.
I love that you offer that, because it is another one of the things I value about the Green Amendment movement and vision. We spend so much time, people who work to protect the environment, or you're not a person who considers themselves an environmentalist, but suddenly you've got a pipeline or a new road or some devastating massive development that's going to really impact your environment, your water, your air, right, your natural resources, perhaps an AI in operation, or there are so many now. And so we spend all this time fighting against things, and it
I
can
love
be
that.
negative and draining. But the Green Amendment, you're fighting for something. You are fighting for something positive. And every time a legislator comes in and says, well, you're just trying to stop blah, 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 you say, no, 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 that's not what I'm doing. I'm not trying to stop this, that, or the other thing. I am fighting for my family, my children, myself, my future generations, the forest I love, the critters I love, whatever it is, I'm fighting for something positive. And so whenever a politician or the industry tries to cast it as a negative, you say, there's nothing negative about this. This is fighting for clean water and clean air, a safe climate, healthy flora, fauna, and ecosystems. Who can be against that? And it's a beautiful response. And it is very empowering, because you're fighting for the positive. And that's a great contribution to the other work we have to continue to do, which is to fight against the negative.
Which can be really intense right now. What do you think is, it is beautiful, and it is something, like, who can argue against clean air and clean water and like beautiful skies, right? But what do you think is the biggest barrier for people to entry to join Green Amendment or get one started? And do you think it's a real barrier, or do you think it's a misconception or something people, like, are they scared it's too hard, but actually it's easier than they make it out to be?
Yeah, there's no barrier. There really is no barrier. I am very accessible. I believe in this. My family believes in this. We, when we're unable to get the resources from the philanthropic community, which, by the way, has proven devastatingly harm, foundations and wealthy people that donate to environmental protection see the power of the Green Amendment pathway, but don't come up with resources. I believe in this so much. My family believes in this so much. We give up special, plans, special family vacations, and say, we're investing it in this, because we don't want anybody to have that barrier. Really, I think the only barrier is getting to understand what this is and figuring out how to get involved. And all you have to do to accomplish that is call me or email me, send a request through our website, greenamendment.org. And you can find me. I'm very accessible, and I'll loop you in, and help you get involved. And sometimes people think, oh, well, oh my gosh, Maya, you're a lawyer. I have to be a lawyer to talk about this. No, you don't. You love yourself, you love your children, you love your community. You know, as a person here on this earth, that you have a right to clean water and clean air and a healthy environment, and that no industrial operator and no government official should be allowed to take that away from you so somebody else can get some profits or some, some political forward momentum. That's all you need to know. Right? I'll come
Hell
into the
yeah.
room with you and argue about the law. You come into the room with your story and your dedication and your heart and your pearls of wisdom, and together we'll make the case. So that really is the only hurdle. Get in touch with me and I'll make sure you get involved.
Amazing. That was amazing. I'm going to say, let's end it right there. And you know, you just told people how to get in a hold of you, but can you say it one more time just so that everybody's clear? How do we find Maya Van Rossum?
So greenamendment.org is the website. It's also forthegenerations.org. Takes you to the same place. On there, there's a form that you can fill out. But truthfully, Maya, Maya, at forthegenerations with an S on the end.org. That's my email. Send me an email. Sometimes I might get a little bit behind on email, but rest assured, I will get to your email and I will get in touch. And chances are, the person who gets in touch will, in fact, be me. And
That's
so
a
I
true
look forward
story.
to talking to you.
I can confirm. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. I love talking to you. I always feel so inspired after chatting. And thank you everyone for sticking around. We will see you next time.